Hello, this is James Williams. This is my second Political Ideas video. Now it's the day after Memorial Day here, 2019. My first video was a general concept of infrastructure. Didn't really go in very much details, was mostly focused on roads. But today I'd kind of like to propose the idea of a national water distribution system. Every year, hell, even every week, there's places in the country that don't have enough water, they're in drought, and other places in the country that have too much water, they're in flooding. Now, I'd like to build a massive water distribution network, something along the size of Interstate 80. Something that, just shoot massive amounts of water for, when we have flooding here in the Midwest, to Texas or Arizona, or heck, even the Plains states when they need water. There's, beyond the sheer construction of this, I'm pretty sure a private company could probably do it for about $12 billion or so. But, I would think this would probably have to be done by the government, just because I don't see any private company having a way to make enough money for them to take the risk. So if the government does it, I imagine it'll probably take about $60 billion to build it. Now, most of this stuff isn't really high tech, it's just a matter of scale. For the most part, you can build it in the median or along the sides of, existing highways, so we don't have to deforest more land. Of course, to a certain extent, you want to route it through, major cities, like you want to run it through Chicago. So, you kind of loop south around Chicago. And we can even connect it to the Great Lakes, because like right now, the Great Lakes are very, very high. So it'd be a great opportunity to drain some water off and send it to Texas or California. But there's also been other times when the water levels in the lake are unnaturally low, and then we might be able to use Lake Michigan as a place to store excess water that we don't need to send anywhere else. And another place where we could do this is the Ogallala Aquifer, underneath the Plains states. Farmers rely on this thing to water their crops in, the arid conditions out there. But over the years, the water level in the Ogallala Aquifer has dropped considerably. Now, if we're pumping, 50, 60 million gallons of water a day, from a flood zone in, let's say North Carolina, and, California and Texas only need, 10 million gallons of water, we can just pump it into the Ogallala Aquifer and let that regain some of its, former standing. Now, there is, things to consider beyond this. I mean, it sounds great now, but beyond the cost, there's also going to be the problem of pollution and spreading contamination, which you can address by filtering the water through sand. Some good 2NS that'll catch all the particles out of it. Bacteria will still get through, but your particles, fish eggs, wildlife, insects, even oil. Oil will stick to the 2NS sand instead of traveling along with the water. Then you only have to worry about dealing with the bacteria and water, which is probably going to be too small for the sand filter to catch completely. So to do that, you would use like infrared radiation. You just have sections where, and the waterway widens out, but it's relatively shallow. And that way, as the sun beats down on it, the infrared radiation from the sun will kill all the various microbes in the water. Or even you can just use fluorescent lights, ultra high output, fluorescent lights, just stick them down in the water, to kill the bacteria with the ultraviolet radiation. There's also other things you can do with it. Since this isn't something that needs to be, constantly flowing, we don't need to use, steady pumps. We can use wind power or solar power, as pumping, to power the pumps to move the water around. And then, if there's a flood in a particular place where we need to move a lot of water out, then, you can tap into the power grid or use diesel pumps or whatever else the city has, hooked up to, pump water out. Yeah. And then there's other options you can do. One of the biggest problems with renewable energy, such as wind and solar, is the fact that the power's not constant. But since you're already pumping water out anyway, you come across a place where you got a large hill next to where this water was running. You pump it up on top of the hill, using solar or wind, so that it pumps at various speeds. And then you let the water flow back down, and then you let the water that's flowing down powers a water turbine. Good old let gravity do its nature. I believe there's something like that was already proposed in Michigan. I think they called it a hydraulic battery. I'm not sure if it's actually been built or not, but yeah, where they just basically use wind and solar to pump water out of Lake Michigan up on top of a bluff. They build up a huge reservoir of water up there, and then they just start letting it flow. And that way, as the water's flowing, it's create that back into Lake Michigan. It's creating a continuous power source that we can use for electricity. It's a way to turn your solar and wind into a steady, reliable power source. I'm sure at some point you'll probably run into a problem where, it's really cloudy for a long time and calm, or something where you just don't get enough power. But with a large enough reservoir up top, that really shouldn't be much of a problem. Alright, well, that's my idea. Thank you very much for watching.